You are listening to the Central Indiana Sports Report, episode 195.4. Grant Shouse reacts to Indiana's 73-64 loss at Oregon on Tuesday night.
You're listening to the Central Indiana Sports Report with your host, Greg Mengelt.
Welcome back, Grant, to the Central Indiana Sports Report. Before we get to you and your reaction to Indiana's 73-64 loss at Oregon, let me do my quick 15-second recap. IU led 64-63 with a minute 53 left after a clutch Trey Galloway three. There was no more clutch after that. Oregon ran off 10 straight points and beat the Hoosiers 73-64. IU shot just 40%. They were led by Galloway 16. Oregon's Jackson Shelstead had a game high 17. Grant, let's start with the positives. All right. First, Oregon's good. They were with them on the road for 38 minutes, and if they just shot a little better, they win that game.
Yeah, I mean, you have to look at the positives. In a season where there's been so many negatives, there were some positives to take out of it. It was their first loss since in over 2 weeks since the UCLA game, and so I guess that's a positive. They hadn't lost. They had been on a 3-game winning streak, and I still think they're in good shape to make the tournament. But
I don't think this hurts them as long as they beat Ohio State.
yeah, now if they lose to Ohio State, in retrospect, it'll hurt them a lot.
Yes, exactly.
At this moment in time, on Wednesday at 4:41 p.m. when we're recording this, it's not that horrible. So, and we talked about in our preview, Jackson Shelstead. We knew he was the guy to watch out for Oregon. He's probably their best player. I didn't get to see the first half from where I was at. I was driving home, and I turned it on at halftime, and Don Fisher came on. And see, I love Don Fisher. I've tried to model my play-by-play that I've done, kind of how he does it. He's a guy that I've looked up to in that aspect. He's honestly still one of the best in the country. And last night his voice was real hoarse and raspy, and you couldn't hear him, and his voice was cracking. And so I was glad enough to get home to watch the second half, and I liked Indiana's fight. And Mike Woodson was rightfully upset after the game, dropping a few F-bombs in his post-game interviews. I thought the officiating was bad. Indiana kind of got hosed in that aspect, but you can also look at it as, well, they should have hit shots down the stretch. They should have made the right plays.
Right.
But when the foul count is, 21-7, that's not even. And that's what killed Indiana, I think, there was some bad officiating. And I don't know if really poor coaching that we've seen all year has to do with that, but
well, we'll get to the negatives. Let's stick with the positives right now. Let me get to the other one. Miles Rice had 4 assists. He needs to play more.
Yeah, and he's playing better. But I don't like the fact of I'm good with Miles Rice, maybe playing a little one-on-one. I don't really like it, but I'm good with him playing one-on-one until, with 17 minutes to play in regulation and you're up. I'm good with him playing a little one-on-one with some guy where he can, try and create something to go get a bucket. I'm not okay with it when Miles Rice does what he did in the Purdue game, did what he did in the Maryland game, where they go down and they just throw up some crap. Like there's no other way to put it. I don't mind that. But I don't mind it when the game's not on the line, but he should be playing more just because of how he's played in the previous couple games, especially against Purdue and Penn State. His defense has been really good.
His defense is good too. That's what I was going to say.
You mentioned the 4 assists he had. He should play, but I think he should be restricted on what he's allowed to go do.
Good point. Absolutely. Kanaan Carlyle. That's one confident young man, though.
Horrible. Yeah, I don't know why we're spending, upwards of $1 million, close to $1 million, if not more, on that kid. That kid, I know you've told me to speak my mind and have opinions, and this is
Absolutely.
probably as harsh. This is probably as harsh of an opinion I'll have on this podcast, no matter how long we do it. That kid is bad. He is not worthy of putting on the Indiana uniform. And why he's been playing recently when he wasn't playing is beyond me. That kid is, and he's going to transfer. I'll be surprised if he comes back under the new administration. But I don't want to say I can't stand him because he's probably a good guy, but just
Yeah, right. We're talking as players, of course.
the decision making from him and even Rice at sometimes, and
Right.
even Balo, the three of your biggest transfers
It's a lot of them.
Yeah, it baffles me. But Carlyle, to me, stands out the most. I kind of thought for a while there during the year, Rice stood out to me the most in that aspect.
Right.
But Carlyle stands out to me more in terms of, like, his decision making is some of the poorest in the Big Ten. And it leaves you scratching your head like, okay, what are we doing? Why are we allowing this? And I'm not so sure that that's all really his fault. Like, think about it. I mean, you have the head coach that's allowing this to continue to happen with him. And even guys like Miles Rice and Umar Balo and some of these other guys, it happens to Gallo. None of them are perfect. It happens with Renew
a lot, yeah.
Especially, it happens with Renew a lot too. So that's not really these guys' fault. I mean, they're not. They're evidently not being told that the decision making is bad because they're continuing to do it. And I know these guys are coachable kids.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I don't get, and that goes back to coaching. So I don't get why they're still doing it if they've been told, if they're supposed to be told that this is not what you're supposed to do. It's like dealing with elementary school kids. Like, you tell little Timmy he can't keep pushing Johnny out on the playground, but you're not really doing anything about it. You're just saying, Timmy, stop pushing Johnny. But Timmy knows he's not going to get punished, so it's like, well, I'm going to keep pushing Johnny until I actually get punished.
Until something happens, right? Exactly.
Until something happens. That's how I look at it. So I don't get it. It starts with Carlyle. Yeah. Why he's been in the game is beyond me. Thankfully, he hasn't done anything, knock on wood, at this point to really, kind of screw them over and them losing a game. He's not been the reason they've lost a game, but him being on the floor is taking other minutes away from guys that are better. He's not better than Anthony Leal. He's not better than Trey Galloway. He's not better than some of those other guys that play his position like Luke Goody. He's not better than Gabe Cupps, who's missed pretty much the entire season with an injury. I just don't get the coaching on why he's been on the floor in some of the biggest moments of the year in some big games. That to me is just, it flies way over my head. But hey, Mike Woodson probably knows more about the game or has forgotten more about the game than I'll ever know. So I have no idea.
Yeah, but we have been saying all year what's up with the coaching, and it's been really bad. So
it's been bad, but in Woody's defense, it's been better in the last couple weeks since he announced he was going to retire.
It sure seems like it, but even then there have been some questionable things. All right, the next one I'm going to give you is a positive and a negative. Renew and Balo both played well at times, and they both were very active and engaged. I like their activity. The negative is they can never play together again. It's bad offensively and defensively.
Yeah, and you can kind of tie the negative into a positive. This is where I think the good coaching from Mike Woodson has come in, and due to the fact that there was a while, especially when Renew was hurt and wasn't playing for a while, and it was just Balo, and even with, even against Penn State when Malik Renew missed the Penn State game because he had an allergic reaction to something prior to the game and had to go to the emergency room. But thankfully he was better, but he got better. but you can't play them on the floor at the same time under this coach. If they played for someone different that was maybe a better coach, I don't know who. It could be, it could, pick one. It could be Bruce Pearl. It could be Bill Self. Maybe the high-low game, because I think that was their idea is, okay, if we get Balo and get Renew to come back, okay, now we have two really great big guys that can be all league players, and we can kind of throw them into the high-low situations and have Renew kind of catch it at the top and be able to rip through and go to the basket, or him catch it in the top in the free throw lane and then dump it to Balo down for a dunk or a layup. I think that was the idea. And as the year went on and they were both on the floor, they realized, neither of these guys really want to do that, because their mentality is, I don't really want to help the team. I just want to go out and do what I'm capable of doing, and it's going to help my draft stock. But at the end of the day, I'm just going to end up playing, in the Sixers G League here in about 3 or 4 years. So I think that was the idea, is that you could do good things with them. It just didn't work out like that. I still like Renew. I don't know who I would take. I don't know who I'd rather have on the floor. Honestly, I think I'd rather have Balo on the floor than Renew, in my opinion. And Balo has done questionable things, similar just to what we talked about with Carlyle. He's done some questionable things, but at the same time, I just think he's a more dominant post presence than Renew. I think he's stronger. I think he's better around the basket than Renew. But then again, I think there's good things that Renew does opposed to Balo, which is, I think he's also really good around the rim. I think he's he's more in shape than Balo is.
They played
And
17 minutes together yesterday, and it was a crucial 17 minutes. I thought when they were both by themselves, they were both pretty good. Although Renew's defense at times, he just was lost out in the middle of nowhere, and it was not
yeah,
good. So I don't
and
know what to do about that.
some of the defense can get lazy as well. Like, I think with Balo, it can get a little lazy.
I don't think it was lazy with Renew. I think he just got lost, which
Yeah.
is not good.
Indiana this year, a good thing to point out is I saw, and when certain assistant coaches on their staff have to scout, is when they've had success. When their assistant coach, Yasir Rosemond, has the scout, before last night, he had the scout for Oregon, but before last night, they were 9-1 on the season when he had the scout on the opposing team. And obviously they lost.
And I thought
So
it was
they're
I thought it was a
9-2
pretty
with
good
him.
game plan last night. In fact,
Exactly. And so that goes to show when these other programs want to hire a guy like Yasir Rosemond to be an assistant coach or even a head coach, maybe at the mid-major level, they look at things like that and they say, okay, he can put a good game plan together, opposed to his colleagues where they're not having as good a success as Rosemond has. And to me, that's really good coaching.
yeah.
But at the end of the day, in-game situations, I think Mike Woodson is the guy to blame for that. And the good things that have happened, like where they hit a shot to beat Ohio State, and I think maybe the tune-up at halftime of the Purdue game, the defensive adjustment for him. And I just think that coaching has helped and hindered this team on so many different points and so many different levels throughout the year.
I think you make a fair point. Last thing, Grant, Mbako was so bad. He had a
Yeah.
couple of offensive rebounds that kind of saved it from a D minus performance. He didn't hit shots. He was lost defensively.
Yeah.
What's up with that?
That you'd have to ask Mackenzie that question. I think Mbako in spurts plays really well. When he committed to Indiana, I was ecstatic because you were still optimistic about the future. I think this was before the fan base had kind of turned on Mike Woodson. This is obviously between Woodson's second year where they went to the second round of the tournament. They were a 4 seed in the tournament with Trace Jackson Davis, Jalen Echevina. That was a good team. And in that offseason, in Indiana, and people are optimistic, but they know, hey, it may be some growing pains this year. And he came in and he started off poor. And he was committed to Duke originally. He decommitted from Duke,
Right.
reopened his recruitment, committed to Indiana over Kansas. And at the end of the day now, where Mbako has not been a consistent enough player, Bill Self, who is one of the best in the country, may be arguably the best in the country, although his Kansas team this year has kind of struggled in some spurts.
No, he's a great coach.
Still a great coach is my
Yep.
point.
Yep.
I think he's sitting there saying, when Mbako is bad, because they all pay attention. They all know. These coaches know who's good and who's bad. They know who's struggling and who's not.
Right. Of course.
They look at Mbako, him and his staff are sitting there probably saying, man, we dodged a bullet. Let Indiana deal with that. We don't got to deal with that. Thank
It
God.
sure looks that way, and that's too bad.
It is too bad because there have been times this year, like I think it was the Purdue game, where I remember saying, no, it wasn't the Purdue game. It was the Michigan State game, and he didn't have a really good game. But I remember saying to myself, because he made a couple moves, and I remember saying to myself, man, he could be a really solid NBA player, Mbako. He has an NBA body. And that is one of the good things about Mike Woodson is that him and his staff, especially I think Woodson himself, they've done a good job at developing these guys into solid NBA players. I mean, look what they did with Trace Jackson Davis. Trace Jackson Davis, from when he played for Archie Miller for 2 years, from the Archie Miller to the Mike Woodson era, his game was night and day compared to what it had been. That goes back to Mike Woodson. I think that also goes back to Trace Jackson Davis getting to work like that and getting, what we would call getting in the lab and but give credit to Trace like that for developing his game and getting better, and especially with Mike Woodson there to help. And I like what Indiana has done from that standpoint. I think they've developed Mbako. They can develop Mbako into being a really good player. I'll be shocked if he comes back, and if he's playing college basketball next season, I think it'll be in a different program.
I think you're probably right.
And I think you could say that for a lot of these guys. I think we can talk about it more when we get into the offseason because I know it'll be something good to talk about. It'll be a good podcast. But Indiana, unless they can hire a really good coach that wants to retain some of these guys like Renew and some of these guys that still have a couple years of eligibility left, I think guys like Renew are going to be gone to another program. Balo's going to graduate. I could see maybe Rice coming back. Goody, I think, is out of eligibility. Galloway's out of eligibility. And Trey Galloway just became the all-time leader in games played in the history of Indiana basketball. I can't remember if it was last night against Oregon or if it was the Washington game, but he passed Yogi Ferrell for the most games ever played at Indiana. And Yogi Ferrell had that record, and he had broken it from Jordan Hall. So goes to show the dedication of guys that have been there with the program, but I just don't see guys like Mbako and Renew and Kanaan Carlyle and those guys just sticking it out through whoever takes over in the new administration.
Thank you so much to our IU guy, Grant Shouse, for giving you his opinions on the Indiana Hoosiers. Look forward to continuing to work with him. And thank you for listening. Please go like, subscribe, or follow us at SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, and especially at YouTube. Just search Central Indiana Sports Report. We are really easy to find. And if you're interested in helping us grow and prosper, please share the Central Indiana Sports Report with your friends and family. We thank you. Central Indiana Sports Report is brought to you by TG Media, and I love Susie.